Imagine an award so twisted that the very institution meant to celebrate peace hands it to someone calling for invasion. The Nobel Peace Prize has been rewarded to far-right Venezuelan politician Maria Corina Machado, who immediately dedicated it to Donald Trump and used her acceptance speech to call for a U.S. invasion of her own country. Now, the world is completely upside down, where the highest accolades go to those serving empire, not humanity. Machado's career has been built on treason. In 2002, she participated in a US-backed coup that briefly overthrew Hugo Chavez, a coup that killed dozens and jailed political opponents. Since 2003, her political groups have been funded by the National Endowment for Democracy, a known CIA cutout. She's promised to hand Venezuela's wealth to Washington. Forget the Saudis, she said. We have more oil. We're going to privatize everything, she bragged, promising that US corporations will make a lot of money if she becomes the next dictator. And this is who wins the Nobel Peace Prize. Machado can hang her prize beside her accolades from Israel. In 2018, she wrote to Benjamin Netanyahu calling for Israeli military intervention in Venezuela. And 2 years later, she signed a cooperation pact with the Likud party. That's Netanyahu's party, pledging to work together on strategy, geopolitics, and security. One of her first calls after receiving the Nobel Peace Prize was, of course, to none other than Netanyahu himself. So at a time when Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, the Nobel Committee's choice sends a clear message. This isn't an award for peace. It's a stamp of approval from empire. And make no mistake, Washington has Venezuela in its crosshairs. The US has deployed 10,000 troops to the region, placing a 50 million bounty on President Nicolas Maduro and authorized CIA lethal operations. Why? Because Venezuela holds the world's largest proven oil reserves, plus vast gold, lithium, coltan, and iron deposits, minerals that power everything from smartphones to missiles. If the Bolivarian revolution falls, it becomes open season for corporations like Chevron, ExxonMobil, Halliburton, and Raytheon. That's the real peace the Nobel Committee is celebrating, the peace of plunder. But Venezuela hasn't stood alone. When sanctions tried to strangle its economy, other sanctioned countries like Iran stepped in, another sanctioned nation that has refused to kneel to US and British empires. Tehran sent fuel tankers, refinery parts, and food shipments, breaking Washington's blockade and helping Venezuela rebuild its refineries. Together, Caracas and Tehran have reformed a South-South alliance of defiance, nations that can't be bought or bombed into submission. Now, like Iran in West Asia, Venezuela in South America represents keyless imperialism, a country that refuses to hand over the keys to its sovereignty. Both have survived years of siege, propaganda, and sabotage, and still stand. It's no coincidence that the same powers trying to destroy Gaza are targeting Caracas and Tehran. They are representing independence, the one thing that empire cannot tolerate. And this isn't the first time the Nobel Committee has dressed up violence as virtue. It went to Aung San Suu Kyi, who later oversaw a genocide. It went to Barack Obama, who bombed 7 countries after receiving it. Jokingly later said, "We murdered some folks." It went to Henry Kissinger as well, whose bombing campaigns killed millions in Southeast Asia. So obscene that his Vietnamese counterpart refused the award. And then it went to Menachem Begin, Yitzhak Rabin, and Shimon Peres. These are Israeli leaders who oversaw the occupation, displacement, ethnic cleansing, and slow genocide of our people, the Palestinian people. The Nobel Peace Prize isn't a mark of virtue, it's a hall of shame, a reward for those who serve empire while pretending to serve humanity. That's what makes Venezuela's stance all more powerful. While Machado aligns herself with Israel, with apartheid, with empire, Venezuela's revolutionary governments have made Palestine a national cause. Under Hugo Chavez, Venezuela cut diplomatic ties with Israel during the 2009 Gaza massacre and formally recognized the state of Palestine. Chavez condemned Israel's actions as state terrorism and declared, "The people of Palestine are our brothers and sisters. Their struggle is our struggle." He opened one of Latin America's first Palestinian embassies, sent medical aid to Gaza, and brought Palestinian children to Venezuela for treatment and education. President Maduro carries that legacy forward. He's backed South Africa's genocide case at the International Court of Justice, voted for Palestinian sovereignty at the UN, and he declared that all of Venezuela is Palestine. In late 2024, Caracas hosted delegates from more than 50 countries and 100 organizations at the International Conference of Solidarity with Palestine under the banner, "From Venezuela to Palestine, we will live and we will be victorious." So, while Venezuela sends food and medicine to Gaza, the Nobel Committee rewards the woman calling for invasion and shaking hands with the very regime carrying out a genocide. The war on Gaza and this Nobel farce reveal the same truth. War criminals are rewarded and empire crowns its own. As Israel levels Gaza with Western weapons, those same powers are already setting their sights on Venezuela, another independent nation rich in oil, minerals, and defiance. Chevron, ExxonMobil, Halliburton, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, these are the same corporations profiting from genocide. They're sitting, waiting to feast on Venezuela next. So when you see a peace prize pinned on a warmonger, remember, it's not about peace, it's about profit. And in this upside down world, the true champions of peace are the ones the empire fears most. Those who stand with Palestine and with nations like Venezuela who are resisting US imperialism and every nation that refuses to bow. I'm Mnar Adley, and this is Behind the Headlines for McPress News. All right. Well, I appreciate you all being here listening to my opening monologue. We are now joined by Hickey, and he is a comedian, an activist, and he was kidnapped by Israel. He was abused like many other flotilla members. He was aboard one of the flotillas, the Samud flotilla, to bring aid and break the siege on Gaza. I pronounced your name incorrectly. I'm going to say it again. Tadhg.
No worries. And you were perfect in the rehearsals.
I know. I practiced it. Still got it wrong.
Not at all. Really lovely to be here with you, Mnar. Really, I've heard lots of great things and I've seen lots of great things myself. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here. And, I want to get your perspective on my opening monologue here with Machado and the Nobel, Prize Committee, who have made their positions extremely clear when it comes to Israel and Palestine effectively supporting the live stream genocide. What's your take on this development?
I mean, my take on Machado winning, I think I got a perverse kind of pleasure out of it, if that doesn't sound too bizarre, because it's just the perfect piece of evidence that you would need for any young or older activist to illustrate to them that the world is now upside down, as you say. If somebody who has kind of prided herself on being an interventionist, on somebody who's pro-force, on somebody who's pro-imperialism, who is literally begging the US to come and exploit and extract wealth from her country, if this type of individual wins the Nobel Peace Prize. It's almost like the logical conclusion of neoliberalism. It's the final piece of the jigsaw to try and convince somebody that we're fighting for the world now. The world is upside down and the people who rule the world are laughing at us. They're making a laughing stock out of the idea of a Nobel Peace Prize. Somebody who's, based their career on being the opposite of being peaceful is now the recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. And she goes on Fox News to to celebrate her victory and champions people like Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. It's just two fingers to us or whatever. And I think what we need to do as a global community of activists, whether we're pro-Palestine or whether we're just pro-humanity or both, is to realize that we are in a fight and that the elites are laughing at us, and we can either allow them to continue laughing at us and to kowtow and to bow down to authority, or we can fight back in our numbers. And I'm excited that I feel like there's never been more people right now who have woken up to the way that the world really works, the way, particularly the Western perspective, the racist, orientalist, capitalist, exploitative mindset. So many people are waking up, and you can choose to go back to sleep if you want. But if you are awake, you have got this moment now where you can try and be part of really changing things and challenging the system. And I have to say, I'm excited by that.
I'm excited too. And, we've seen just this massive wave of people around the world who have woken up, maybe people we've even disagreed with in the past, and they are now standing in solidarity with Palestine. And just, what this genocide has also done is kind of help people pop through those propaganda bubbles and see the US empire for what it is, and maybe say, okay, maybe we were lied to about these previous wars as well. And really, there's no such thing as a humanitarian intervention. But then we have people like Bono from U2, Bono from U2, and other celebrities who have stood with apartheid Israel, even in the face of a genocide. And he's Irish. I mean, what is your take on that?
I mean, Bono is the most un-Irish person I can think of. First of all, he's extraordinarily cocksure, which is very un-Irish. Like, if you know any Irish people, or if you've been to Ireland, we're falling over ourselves to apologize for our very existence. Like, we're a very humble type of person. And that's the first and foremost way that I just don't recognize Bono as one of my kin at all. But the most fundamental way, and the most embarrassing way, to be serious for a moment, is that it really is quite embarrassing for Irish people to see somebody so in the public eye to kind of renounce his own identity in a way. Like, if you don't see the Palestinian struggle in the Irish struggle, they're so comparable in so many ways. The exact same colonial playbook that was used to dehumanize Irish people and to destroy Irish culture and way of life is being meted out against the Palestinians right now, except on a scale that even the Irish can't identify with. So Bono has sold his soul, in my opinion. Bono has made the decision that his own corporate interests and his own deals with Israeli banks are more important to his own soul, I think. And that's the juncture that we're at. I mean, that's where Ireland is at right now. As a country, we have a reputation for being pro-Palestine. I think our government they're not particularly Zionist. They're no more soulless than any other government in Western Europe. But what they are is completely dependent upon the US. Ireland is almost like a vassal state of the US at this point. And we're so scared that if we piss off the US, if we piss off Donald Trump, then our economy will go to pieces overnight. So we're at this juncture where it's literally our pocketbook or our soul, and we're fighting for our own soul and our own identity, I think, as a people that not only overcame our own colonial struggles, but stand with oppressed people all over the world. That's what Irishness is to me. That's what Irish republicanism is, and Irish anti-imperialism. And that's the fight that we're in right now. And we're at that juncture. That's what our presidential candidacy is about at the moment. We're in the midst of a presidential election. And I think that's the case all over Europe and the world. Gaza has exposed us all, has exposed everyone. And there's no going back. It's going to be a before Gaza genocide world and an after Gaza genocide world. I'm absolutely convinced of that.
That's a very good point. And, every single Irish person I've ever met, even here in the United States or when I've traveled abroad, every single one of them, without question, they find out I'm Palestinian American. I lived under Israeli occupation. I witnessed the brutality of the the apartheid state. And they find out I'm Palestinian, and they are just going nuts. Like, we love the Palestinian people. We stand in solidarity. Israel is a genocidal apartheid regime.
Yeah.
You can't find that here, even on the streets of America. So the solidarity is so loud, and we love it. And we're so proud of our Irish brothers and sisters. But
if you come and visit us, like, you're so welcome, and I'll show you around Cork, and particularly the north of Ireland. But the thing I'm finding with Palestinian friends and the diaspora Palestinians, when they come here, they start looking at house prices.
I've actually heard that before. Yeah, it sounds like Ireland is a place where we are welcomed, and we are rejoiced, and we appreciate that. Yeah,
we understand. Let's just put it that way. We understand.
Yeah, well, that's very kind of you. We really appreciate that. And right now we have countries like the UK who are basically cracking down on all of this solidarity. I mean, just today, the UK removed Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. This is an HTS, Al-Qaeda affiliated group operating inside of Syria. They removed them off the terror list, right? But then they've designated groups like Palestine Action, who have disrupted Israel's weapons factories and their operations, as the terrorists. Like, so much irony in that. Talk to me about that.
I mean, I as an Irish person, again, like, there's this perverse sense of watching Britain kind of in this ongoing making a fool out of itself process that began with Brexit, and again now seems to be coming to its zenith with this Starmer-led government that has just lost its own sense of self. It's extraordinary to me watching Britain to make the decision to leave the EU because apparently it wanted to take back control of its country, take back control of its borders, which obviously is a kind of a post-empire racist kind of longing for an imperial past that apparently was brilliant, but obviously most of the rest of the world, particularly in the global south, would say that it was just about genocide and wealth extraction, and the Irish would agree with that. But you have this nostalgia for empire, and you take your country back, apparently, which has been an economic disaster for Britain. And then it seems in the last 2 years, what you do is you switch the levers of power from Brussels to Tel Aviv, because it feels like Britain is back under the control of a foreign government again, and it just happens to not be the EU anymore, and it's Israel. I mean, I again, maybe it's because I'm Irish, or I'm pro-Palestinian, or maybe I'm just a human being still with a brain and a soul. But the last week, the British media have been exclusively focused, it seems to me, on an Israeli football club and whether their fans should be allowed to travel to Birmingham for a match or not, and whether that amounts to anti-Semitism. Like, Britain and the British media and the British establishment should be absolutely ashamed of themselves that they're focusing on the concerns of a Zionist football club with supporters that hit the streets of European cities shouting and singing songs about raping and murdering Arabs. And this is the main point of discussion in the British establishment and the British media. Britain should be looking and hanging its head in shame at not just the historical role that it played in creating all this horror and hell for Palestinians with the Balfour Act and so on, and moreover, its shameful role in providing diplomatic cover, weapons and money for this racist apartheid rogue state to continue its extermination and starvation of a civilian population. Britain, as always, is guilty of rank hypocrisy and, as always, has its priorities all wrong. But I would call on the British patriots, who have been tormenting me and other Irish Republicans and anti-imperialists for my whole life, my whole career, the Britain First Brigade. Where are they? I mean, how could you be Britain First and have your spiritual leader, Tommy Robinson, over on a jolly in Tel Aviv at the moment? How could you be Britain First when most Labour politicians are prioritizing the Israel lobby, are happy to go after activists at the behest of the Israel lobby. It doesn't seem like it's Britain first at all. It feels like it's Israel first in Britain at the moment. And I would just call on the British patriots to stand up and take back control of your country again.
And we're seeing a very prime example of this Israel first that you described in this recent arrest by the Met Police of this British Palestinian NHS doctor, Rahma Al-Adwan. She was arrested today for a speech that she gave at a pro-Palestine demonstration in London. And they say that it was incitement against Israel and implied support for resistance forces. Can I get your reaction to this news and what you make of this incredible wave of authoritarianism sweeping the UK right now?
Well, again, it's just extraordinary to me that, you know, before we get on to Rahma, who I'm very proud to say I've met several times and I'm friends with, you know, say if you look at Bob Vylan and the Glastonbury controversy. So Bob Vylan, they have lyrics in their songs that challenge the British establishment, like really spicy lyrics about the Queen and other aspects of, you know, the British establishment, as I say, that, by the way, I would agree with. And I think it's like really strong punk music, but it's very challenging. If you were a British nationalist or a proud British imperialist, you would find a lot of their lyrics, you know, challenging. They've never once had any issue whatsoever. They've never been banned. They've never been censored. Nobody took any notice of them in the British establishment. Suddenly they started criticizing Israel and they were having their visas revoked. They were like a national scandal. And again, I thought to myself, where is the British establishment? Where are the British patriots? They're losing their mind over Israel. Like, just so bizarre. And in the case of Rahma, I think the problem with her and an activist like her is that she's unrepentant. And what the British establishment and I suppose the Israel lobby wants is repentance. They want us to say sorry for making their Zionist feelings a bit hurty. They want us to say sorry for being pro-Palestine. They want us to say sorry for being anti-genocide. And the best of us, I think, and the most thoroughgoing, like Rahma, won't do that. And it feels to me like it's a personal thing with Wes Streeting. It's a personal thing with some of the hierarchy of the Labour Party. They want to make an example of her because she is unrepentant, because she is a problem for them, because she's very articulate. She's a doctor. She states her case very, very clearly. She's Palestinian. And they want to get rid of people like that. They want to suppress people like that. So I urge people to stand with her. But I also urge people in around her to be more like her. The moment that you start making peace with Zionists, I think, and trying to assuage them in any way, then they savage you, as happened with Jeremy Corbyn. So stand up and be proud of our position. It's not a radical position. Our position is we're against the murder of babies. We're against the targeting of healthcare workers and journalists. We're against US imperialism and all its machinations. We don't have to be ashamed of that at all. That should actually be the orthodox, uncontroversial position.
Absolutely. And you took a very noble stance with what you just said. You boarded the Sumud flotilla a few weeks ago. You just returned home and you were subject, like you and all the other flotilla members that were arrested and detained, kidnapped, I should say, you faced a lot of abuse, zip-tied. You were forced to watch hours of October 7th propaganda. Tell us about what has happened. What happened when you were kidnapped, and what has happened since you've returned home?
I think we were saying beforehand, I'm a kind of a delayed reaction guy. So I will probably process what happened months down the line. I would say the main thing I'm dealing with since I came home is I mean, this might sound stupid, but I didn't quite get my head around how worried my family would be. And they were really traumatized. And I think I've talked to one or two, Layla Higazi in the US today about it. And I think none of us were prepared for the fact that we wouldn't be able to get any messages out whatsoever. So that's the key thing that really upset my family, because I suppose I'm so vocal online and they were worried that they might make an example out of me. And when they couldn't get through to me and they didn't hear from me, they were starting to fear the worst, that I don't know, that I would be physically tortured or whatnot. So, but that's all part of the fear game that the Israelis play. It's and I should preface what I'm about to say by saying that what we experienced is really nothing on what Palestinians experience all the time, and we're very aware of that. And it's not just a mantra; it's something that we need to be very, consistent when we're speaking about this, because we will never experience what it's like to have the full torture situation, because we have passports of privilege. Though the Israelis know that whatever they do to us, we were going to get out. And for me, I'm lucky. I'm going to have the opportunities to speak to people like yourself. But there are many Palestinians that don't have that opportunity. They don't have the passports, and I really found it chilling when I was incarcerated. And they weren't letting me sleep. They didn't give us access to medicine. We couldn't see doctors. We couldn't get a message out. People needed their insulin and they were left without insulin for days on end. No drinking water. You're kind of frightened into thinking you're going to be there indefinitely. And I mean, I was trying to keep myself sane more than anything else, but I was lying on my bed with there's 11 or 12 other lads kind of low-key losing their mind in the room with me. And I just thought to myself, if they're treating us like this with the passports that we have, I don't even want to think about what they're doing to Palestinians, many of whom are children in these torture camps right now. And that was the most chilling thing I could possibly imagine. And I suppose if they thought that by treating us bad, it was going to turn us off this kind of mission to try and document and expose their crimes and their atrocities and to advocate for the Palestinian cause, obviously the opposite is the case. I think 100,000 people have already signed up for the next flotilla mission. So Israel has got one trick. It's to escalate their violence, their hatred. I'll give you one very quick example. When we were pretty much causing a riot on one of the wings of our prison to try and get Paddy, a 75-year-old Irishman, his insulin, instead of bringing a doctor, they brought SWAT teams, with dogs and guns. And that's Israel. They don't have a diplomatic, empathetic bone in their body. All they know is violence and then escalated violence. And that's all they do. And they said, we don't have any doctors for animals. They view us as, obviously they view Palestinians as animals, or less than animals, I would say, and their allies. And I think that level of hateful ideology has a shelf life. And I do believe that the Zionist entity is entering its final days. I do believe that.
And, the ceasefire has been in place for about a week now, and Israel has killed, I would say, 100 Palestinians since the ceasefire was announced. They've violated it, over 90 times since the ceasefire was announced. Where do you see this going?
I mean, the ceasefire, for me, from the Western perspective, is kind of like it's an attempt at hoodwinking. It's kind of like trying to tell the activists who have dedicated a lot of time and energy over the last 2 years, it's trying to assuage them and kind of say, look, we've got this peace plan, everything's going to be dandy. Israel's going to stop all this killing stuff that you've been seeing on your phones. I mean, it may not be real anyway, it's probably AI, but if you have seen some stuff that you feel is real, that's going to stop. We've got a peace plan. It's a hoodwink. It's obviously not real for the reasons that you've just outlined. The extermination hasn't stopped. The starvation hasn't stopped. So I think it provides a kind of a crossroads for the pro-Palestine, pro-humanity community. Either we can be hoodwinked by empire again and allow ourselves to tail off and say, look, we've been doing this a long time. We're tired. And I'm sure it'll improve now that there's a ceasefire has been called. Or we can refocus and kind of think to ourselves, what do we need to do now to stand with Palestinians as they seek proper justice and liberation for their cause? And I think it's a moment where some people who aren't in it for the long haul might feel the desire to fall away, and other people will look at it as an opportunity to take a helicopter view almost and see that Gaza is just the beginning. We're in the midst of, as I was saying at the start, in a fight for our own humanity and our own futures. And without being cheesy about it, like, we're fighting for the world that our kids are going to grow up in as well. I mean, one of the main motivations for me, even though I really missed my kids unbearably and my heart was broken when I was on the flotilla thinking about them, but I did go on the flotilla for my kids in a way, because I love them and I want them to grow up in a world that doesn't normalize looking the other way when people are being mass murdered and starved to death. I want them to grow up in a world where they believe that they are just as good, no better or worse than any other kid in a truly egalitarian world. That's what I'm fighting for. It's not here right now. It's not achievable tomorrow, but that's what I think we need to fight for. So some kind of half-hearted, pissy ceasefire and peace plan that doesn't actually really include Palestinians at all and doesn't have Palestinian self-determination seemingly at any stage of this peace plan is nothing to get excited about. It's nothing to kind of rest on our laurels about. It should be just a juncture where we refocus and take the fight all the stronger and all the more determined to US imperialism and the Zionist entity.
And that's obviously why all of us are in this movement, whether it's journalism or activism or, aborting these flotillas or speaking up or, organizing the protests or the sit-ins or disrupt, all of this. We're all in this because we want our children to have a better future and teach them that, we don't sit idly by while a major oppression is taking place. And I know that this is rooted in your Irish background. I know you mentioned it kind of in the beginning, but could you kind of explain more why the Irish are just so different? I mean, you Irish are just different. You're built different. Why are you built so different from the rest of the Western countries when it comes to standing up for Palestinian human rights?
We're different because we've been through some of the same shit that you've been through. I mean, that's basically it. In terms of the European context, the Irish are unusual because we know colonialism, we know dehumanization, we know what it's like to be ripped off our land because the colonizer deems us to be ethnically inferior. We know all that stuff. In terms of our language, our culture, our way of life, they're still under threat. In many cases, we're trying to rejuvenate our language at the moment with some success, actually. But the decolonizing process is a long road, as you know. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And I think when most Irish people, it's not even an intellectual thing, it's a spiritual kind of connection in our bones and in our DNA. When we see people being mass murdered and slaughtered, when we see civilian population being starved to death, and there's no reason for this so-called famine. There was a famine in my country too, a so-called famine. But the British, a bit like the Israelis and the Americans at the moment, were happy just to let Irish people die, because they were in the way. That's a man-made starvation. That's not a famine. If you're an Irish person, you see what's going on in Gaza at the moment and you identify with the colonizer and not the colonized, I don't think you're Irish at all, or I think you've lost your mind. So the connection with Palestine is deep. It's real. If you travel to West Belfast today, or many parts of Ireland, but particularly West Belfast and Derry, you will see as many or more Palestine flags than you will Irish tricolours. And you will see murals on the wall in West Belfast about the Palestinian struggle and the Irish struggle and the way that they're connected together. But I would say you don't have to be Irish. You don't have to be from a colonized country to connect deeply with the Palestinian cause right now, because it is the cause of humanity. I mean, Nelson Mandela said it was the moral issue of our time, and that becomes more true with every passing year, I think, and it's at its most true right now. So it helps to be Irish, it helps to be colonized, but I think you just have to have a pulse, really, to see that the Palestinian cause right now is the cause of humanity. It's a just cause, and that's why we should never kowtow, or we should never be embarrassed to be pro-Palestine. And the companies and the corporations and the nations that want to criminalize us and want us to kowtow, they're the ones that should be criminalized. They're the ones who should be called out. They're the ones who should be boycotted, not us.
And Tadhg, you're also a comedian. This is my final question for you. How easy has it been for you to be a comedian with your politics, to tour around the world, to play the shows? What has been your experience and your successes as an Irish comedian?
I suppose in terms of comedy, I haven't done much stand-up in the last couple of years. I struggle with kind of standing on a stage and making jokes at the moment, and that's no shade on people who are doing stand-up. They're maybe just better at it than I am at finding the funny on stage. I find that easier online because I feel like satire, and I'm building a full new satire show at the moment called Now, Not on Our Watch, with Nicole Jennings. We've shot a first few episodes of it, and we're hoping just make that show ourselves and not go to the Netflixes and the BBCs of the world anymore. Not that they'd have us anyway, I suppose, at this point, but just to keep trying to get crumbs off the king's table, just to try and make stuff ourselves. That's really been the goal. But I suppose like I'd always be making satire, but never in my life did I would imagine it would have the reach it has had in the last year or more, not just for me, but for many of my friends and colleagues online as well. It just feels like satire reaches people to tell them the truth about the way the world works in a way that I can't reach them when I'm just kind of pontificating or chatting to camera. It really is such a useful tool at the moment. But I suppose to conclude on the comedy front, it's worth reminding people, I suppose, that when I started off making sketches about this cause or the genocide, it was actually Palestinians who told me to do it. Like you're saying, I was very nervy about saying or doing anything like comedic about a genocide. I mean, I had been making comedy sketches about the British Empire and whatnot, but like this was a distant thing. I was making sketches about, the partition of India. I mean, the wounds aren't so raw as an ongoing live stream genocide, but actually it was my Palestinian friends in Ireland that said, get in there. Satire has a huge role to play, and you'll never find anything as easy to satirize as Israeli propaganda. And boy, were they right.
That's true. There's too much in there, and they're just such a propagandized society that
Yes.
they kind of just out themselves, like they don't have to do much work.
Well, this
but
is
they
it. What I said at the time was like, I believe that these people are satirizing themselves. I'm not
Yes.
sure how much I can add, but apparently there was a little to go.
Well, you're doing an incredible job, and we really appreciate all of your activism and your efforts to expose the Israeli propaganda machine. I mean, I, as a Palestinian, commend you for all that you've done, and we appreciate the solidarity, and we hope to support your new show.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, absolute pleasure talking to you. And look, ally for life. So please reach out. I'm happy to do my little bit.
Thank you so much.